It took ages to fully realize that pretty much any limit I'd imposed on myself didn't really stand up to scrutiny. Now, this is an ongoing process, by the way. The subconscious likes clearly defined barriers, so pushing them back is a work in progress. But what I can tell you is it gets easier all the time. The thing I really want to encourage you to do is to forget the whole concept of impossible, to set your sights high and decide what you really want. Ignore what seemed impossible, because things rarely are. It's most usually simply a question of knowing how to go about something, and if you don't know how, then using these techniques to work it out. As regards the impossible and things becoming possible, you've seen this with technology as you've lived your life. Modern homes are stuffed full, crammed to the rafters, with things which would have seemed impossible until only a few years ago. The creators of internet search engines managed to work out how to search and then return the results of many hundreds of millions of web pages, and to do it in a fraction of a second. As a former computer analyst and programmer, that still amazes me because I have absolutely no idea how they do it so fast. Having decided to think in terms of possibilities rather than impossibilities, the next thing to do is to decide that having a better life is important enough for you to invest yourself in making good things happen. Now, when I talk about investing, I'm not talking about money. I simply mean this. You decide what you want, and you say to yourself that you'll do what it takes to live your life better and to attract all kinds of wonderful change into your life. In other words, you want to be like a magnet that attracts opportunity and good fortune, allowing you to achieve the things you want. You almost certainly know at least one person who just seems to be really lucky. Maybe everything seems to go their way. Perhaps you've even had the thought, if it's someone at work, that they've got the success that you deserve. Now, knowing that some people are like this and that they exist is one thing. Turning yourself into someone that attracts opportunity and success is another, but there are ways to do it. When used in the right way, pstek repatterning allows you to do this because it gives you the most powerful tools ever created for changing the things that you need to change: feelings, beliefs, and behaviors. From this point on, I'll show you how you can destroy old barriers to success. You can erase the negative effects of the past, and you can also use the tools to create new inner realities, changing feelings, beliefs, and behaviors, replacing the ones that don't serve you with the ones that do. I'd like you to imagine being inside a room with a locked door and some windows. This room, with its locked door and windows, will represent your mind and your existing limitations. Scattered around the inside of that locked room alongside you are the following: your life as it is now in the present, and also all of your life's experiences and memories. None of them are outside of those walls. Imagine this because your life has been lived within certain boundaries, outside of which you've never stepped. Beyond those walls are things which you could have done, which maybe other people have already enjoyed. It might be friendships, money, travel, or anything else. Now find a window and notice the other things you could have been enjoying and living. That's what life's already like for some other people. It's changing your mind and what goes on inside it that allows you to start living differently. If you've read some of the literature that relates to success, you'll have come across the same theme countless times. Change your mind to change your life. Well, that's all very well, but without the tools to change your mind in the right ways, it's advice that can be extremely difficult to follow. And that's really where I'm headed with this for you, because soon we'll move on to exactly how to use the pstek tools to do this. Now remember, you can download the free pstek tracks to make a great start, and if you want to, you can work through this process using just the free tools. Because some of the optional pstek audios make progress even faster and easier and more powerful, I'm going to explain how to use those too, but if you really needed to, it's possible to manage with just the free tools. My advice on this one, basically, I suppose, is to get whatever you can afford. Definitely get the free pstek audios because you'll need them. If you think faster, easier progress is worth $37 or whatever it is, then get pstek Level 1. It's easily affordable, and you'll get tracks that make this process even easier. But like I said, you can use the free ones if that's what you want to do. If you can get the accelerators as well, so much the better. They make longer-term use of pstek much more productive, and they can be particularly useful for certain things, such as weight loss. And I'll explain why later, and also explain how you can work without them, but if you can get them, then do it. You might as well, because you want to make this as easy as possible. Whatever you've got, make sure you've got the free tracks, because you do need those to work through this process. So from this point on, I'll describe what to do, and I'll explain it with reference to the free pstek tracks, and I'll also, on occasions, mention the optional extras, but they're not obligatory. This way, whatever you've got, you'll make the best progress with this tutorial. Remember, the pstek audios are designed to change emotions and thought processes. When used in the correct way, you can use them to achieve pretty much anything you want. When you change your mind and your thinking successfully, it starts to feel as though you can actually warp and bend reality around you in accordance with your new way of thinking. In fact, several authors on the subject of self-improvement have been totally convinced that changing their thinking actually changed the physical world around them. Now, really, this is hardly surprising because unconscious self-sabotage can go on for an entire lifetime. But unconscious self-sabotage is just that, unconscious. When you stop the self-sabotage, which happens in the subconscious, then of course it starts to feel as though the world is changing around you and you've got lots and lots of opportunity coming your way. Now, once those self-defeating unconscious behaviors end, better things happen. But explaining exactly why can be difficult because the unconscious self-sabotage has been unconscious. When you think in the right way, instead of struggling, things just seem to happen easier. Good things happen and life generally gets better. After repatterning successfully, this happens to a great extent simply because your subconscious allows it to happen. By the way, you're not at all to blame for the unconscious barriers that have prevented you from achieving some of the things you want. You are simply the product of your life's experiences, and what's going on below the level of conscious awareness is a product of those experiences. No matter how real the limitations may seem, they're not. Change is always possible. To further illustrate that anything is possible, let me give you another example. Imagined limitations can be really extreme, but even really extreme ones can be removed. So let me give you an example of something really extreme that can be removed. Now, as some listeners will already know, and because the techniques I've developed are so powerful, I spend some of my time helping people with problems that are ruining their lives. Now, recently, for example, I saw a young lady who'd been afflicted by a truly terrible anorexia. I was asked to release her from the anorexia so that she could enjoy a normal life instead of the tormented one she currently had. Now, because nobody else seems to have a clue how to do this, curing anorexia and some other related eating disorders has become something of a speciality of mine. Now, as is so often the case, her entire family was suffering because of her chronic anorexia problem. She'd had several years of conventional treatment, which had proved totally useless, and things were getting pretty desperate. Like many people with anorexia, she'd found that as well as the terrible feelings related to food, weight, and hatred of self, it had become ever more powerful as it progressively increased its grip on her and boxed her in more and more over time. Now, because things had become so bad, and never feeling good about herself, the young woman had a genuine willingness and desire to be helped and to allow change to happen. In fact, she was truly desperate to feel differently, but no amount of effort on her part had helped her in any way. Her achievement in this respect was not limited by effort, but by invisible barriers held in place by what was happening below consciousness. Something like this, whereby someone's beliefs are so far out of touch with reality that they starve themselves to a point where they're endangering their lives, I would say is fairly extreme in terms of limited thinking. And that's why I want to give you this as an example to show you what's possible using the principles on this audio. I used a combination of hypnosis and pstek repatterning to release her. It took just 2.5 hours to do this. And at the end of that time, she no longer had the anorexic feelings or beliefs, and when I left her, what she wanted to do first was to go out and enjoy a meal with her family. That would be the first time in years that she'd been able to do that. I think I'm probably the only person in the world so far who knows how to do this so quickly and so easily. But essentially, I use the same kinds of repatterning skills I describe on this audio, albeit with a few special twists just to speed it up. So yes, what I'm describing here, what I'm about to describe, is really powerful in terms of changing your own thinking for the better. They really do work powerfully for pretty much anything. Now, whatever your imagined limitations may be, and they are imagined, I really want to stress that, they can be removed, so they no longer prevent you from being successful. Now, I could just as easily have removed a case of writer's block, I've done that before, or helped somebody be a better sportsman, musician, or actor. Repatterning can also be used to cause someone to perform superbly well at something like a job interview, to land that better paid job, to make a business hugely successful, or perhaps for you to give the performance of a lifetime at a crucial audition. In every case, I could have used pretty much exactly the same techniques to release those hidden blocks, create new possibilities, and from there, new realities. Now, in the case of this anorexic young woman, the doctors and psychologists had made the classic mistake of having her work ever harder and harder to try to beat it. In the mental world, though, very often, effort is counterproductive. For many people, and with all kinds of desired achievement, the harder somebody tries to change themselves, the more impossibly difficult it becomes. And if you look back over your own experience at trying to be successful with something that you haven't been, you may be able to confirm this. Often, the harder someone tries to change things, the worse things seem to get. And there's a reason for this, and understanding this reason helps to make achievement and success so much easier. It's because subconscious barriers are there to stop change, and as every failure occurs, the expectation of subsequent failure increases. That leads to expectation of failure, and as the expectation of failure increases, success becomes more and more difficult to achieve as the barriers and limitations close in and solidify even more. If you've tried hard to achieve something but never seem to get a break, then hopefully this helps you to understand why. It's because your subconscious has been pushing back against whatever effort you made in order to keep you boxed inside the limitations it currently understands. The harder you push to escape them, the harder it pushed to keep you constrained. The trick with this is to show the subconscious that those limitations don't need to be there and which barriers to remove, and then help it to do that. If the subconscious sees no reason for a barrier to exist, then it won't push back against you. And once you do this, you simply step through into new territory with little effort. Achievement is not just about effort. It's about using the right tools and the right methods to create change. Unfortunately, those methods are actually very straightforward. But failure to understand this is why so many people slog their guts out their entire lives and never seem to get anywhere, whereas other people just seem to coast along and good things happen for them. This is why repatterning is so important. It changes those things for you, and it releases the barriers. Everything, every aspect of your life, whatever it is, can be repatterned. The other classic mistake, by the way, that the psychologists and psychiatrists had made is that they'd tried to make her rationalize her way out of a problem that is, by its very nature, completely irrational. I get paid really well now for working with people because I know how to do these things quickly and extremely effectively. In the case of that particular young woman, her parents had paid around £1,000 for me to work with their daughter for just 2.5 hours. They got much more value from the transaction than I did, because their daughter was freed from a nightmare. For them, such a result was priceless. I'll say some more about this later when I discuss assessing your monetary value to others. Another thing to notice here is how quickly she could be helped. Despite her extreme way of thinking, when it was done in the correct way, using the principles described as we go through on this audio, all the limitations and feelings which had boxed her in and controlled her in ever more extreme ways for years were gone incredibly fast. To her, it must have seemed as though it was almost in an instant. And of course, it was only after they were gone that she could see how unreal all of those ways of thinking and the limitations had been in the first place. Let's come back to you. Your own limitations may seem absolutely real to you, but they're not. It's simply an illusion. You've probably spent years rationalizing things that make no sense, which are really based on feelings. The limits you've placed on your levels of success and what you can achieve are not real, and they never were. Once you accept this simple truth, you are already halfway to being released from what's held you back. And that's why I'm spending so much time on this. Even simple changes to your thoughts and feelings in this respect will have profound effects on all of your outcomes. Now, as I work to repattern myself, a process which I continue to use, of course, my own thinking has changed hugely, and it's continuing to change. As regards the impossible, my advice is to completely ignore what other people may have said to you, because your limitations are imagined. I've been successful in creating tools that used to be thought impossible. That's something I've already done. And using those tools, I've created resolutions to problems that absolutely no one else could resolve. And in less than 12 months, pstek has gone from being completely unknown to being used by many thousands of therapists and self-helpers right around the world. And as I record this, steps are being taken to take it into the corporate world and the world of education. I think I may have already mentioned that. Alongside of this, I've got online sales providing an automated level of income, and I know that that's something that most people can only dream about.